Welcome to The Budding Writer. This podcast offers an outlet for aspiring authors to showcase their original short stories or fan fiction one-shots. I'm your narrator, Shayna Armand. This is how it works. When you hear this sound, the story will begin, and when you hear it again, the story has ended. Today's author is providing us a fan fiction from the world of Pokemon. This is a prologue to his other work that is actually on fanfiction.net under the username Rylek196. Now, if you're not familiar with Pokemon, it is a Japanese-originated craze that handles everything from manga to cartoons to video games. In fact, last year, I went ahead and bought my husband a Christmas sweater with a Pikachu on it. So why don't you sit back and enjoy this Pokemon adventure with me. Long Way to Fall by Rylek196. Narrated by Shayna Armand. Prologue. Forced Evolution. "Is everything ready?" a man with green hair asked. "Yes, sir," a scientist wearing a lab coat sitting in front of a control panel answered. "The laser is good to go. We can begin any time." The other scientist sitting next to him was not so confident. "This is insane," he muttered fearfully. "Once we do this, that thing's gonna evolve, get loose, kill everything. Everything being us." The green-haired man simply pulled a Pokeball from his belt and clicked the circular button on its front twice, opening it. In a flash of light, a deadly-looking Pokemon appeared. It was red, humanoid, and just over 5 feet tall. Its body was clad in armor resembling a samurai mixed with a chess piece, an axe-like blade adorning its head. Wickedly sharp blades were also present on its forearms and stomach. The Pokemon took a fighting stance as the offending scientist cowered in fear. "Bishop!" "As you will," the green-haired man said. "Night Slash!" As the Bishop's four-armed blades extended to twice their usual length, the doomed scientist got up out of his chair and ran for the door. Bishop, however, moved to block his way, grabbing him and slamming him into the wall hard enough to make the man cry out in pain. With a quick motion of one of his arms, it then cut his throat wide open, letting him slide to the floor with a choking gurgle, his blood pooling on the floor. The other scientist gave an uninterested grunt as the green-haired man recalled the Bisharp to its Pokeball. That was Getsis for you, the scientist thought. All business, all committed to his goals, all the time. There was no room for those who were uncertain, and his murder of the scientist demonstrated a fundamental rule of Pokemon. They could not kill each other, but they could very easily kill humans. "Shall we bring it in, sir?" he asked, not giving the corpse a second glance. "Yes," Getsis replied. "Get someone down here to replace the incompetent, and have guards posted outside the room with the fighting types, just in case." The scientist nodded, calling someone over the intercom in the lab. 2 more workers hurried into the room shortly thereafter, one dragging the body away, while the other sat down behind the control panel preparing to monitor the energy levels of the Pokemon that was about to be brought into the adjacent room. Through a large, thick glass window, they could see a scientist wheel a cart on a track into the room behind the control panel. Thoroughly strapped down to the cart was a black and blue colored quadrupedal dark dragon type known as Zwilus. Zwilus was a very unique Pokemon, to say the least. The middle stage of the Dino line, it could evolve into its final form, the deadly pseudo-legendary called Hydreigon, one of 2 ways. The first way was to get both Zwilus's dueling dual heads that often competed over food to like each other, accomplished by raising it to level 64. This would trigger a split personality merge, leading it to evolution into Hydreigon. However, this approach comes with significant downsides, particularly where time and training were concerned. Raising as Zwilus, which were notoriously difficult to handle at the best of times, took many months, and Getsis did not have that much time. Not now. Fortunately, there was another way. This second option was dismissed by experts worldwide as insane, barbaric, and it was something that only the most uncaring and utterly inhumane of trainers would dare to do. Getsis gave an evil smirk, recalling that last quote. What he wouldn't have given to see the look on the face of the fool who said it. Professor Rowan right now. He would have to snap his neck afterwards, of course, though still, in hindsight, it was a massive error in judgment to leave such a crucial part of Biz's plan to the last minute, but now there was no other choice. Once two guards, armed with fighting types, one of the Dino line's few reliable weaknesses, were posted outside the room of this Vilas was in, Getsis gave the order. Fire up the laser. Make sure to keep it steady, and watch for any sign of that thing's energy levels fluctuating. Yes, sir, the first scientist replied, pressing a few buttons on the control panel. The other kept a close eye on the monitor in front of him. Through the glass window, a machine attached to the ceiling whirred to life. Various red lights on it powered up, glowing. Slowly, it began to move along its rail until it was about a foot from the Xylus. The Pokemon thrashed against its restraints, but they were simply too strong. Its energy levels are steady despite how much it's struggling, the scientist watching the monitor reported. Good, Getsis said. Ready? At the other scientists, he nodded and simply said, Do it. The man flipped a switch, and the machine began to fire a red-hot laser from its tip, leaving a scorch mark in the floor. It moved closer to one of the unfortunate Xylus's two necks. There was no blood, gore, or anything of the sort, as the hostile Pokemon had its head cut off, nor had anyone expected there to be. Pokemon were unlike any other beings in the universe, comprised of solid energy and nothing more. This was why they were unable to kill each other, as the energy of their attacks and energy that made up their bodies canceled each other out, preventing fatal damage. Even the fabled Hoenn deities of the land and sea, Groudon and Kyogre, could not kill a measly Caterpie. In fact, as its decapitated head fell to the floor, it dissolved into a white mist. That's all we need to do, Getsis said. Shut it down. With the turn of a knob, the laser was powered down. Beginning at the stump on the end of its neck, a white glow began to envelop the Xylus's body. The glow spread until it had completely covered the hostile Pokemon. Its form became larger, more fearsome, more deadly. To the horror of the scientists, the restraints holding the evolving Xylus down began to snap due to its changing body shape. Should we be worried, sir? The second scientist asked. Getsis just shot him a dark look that said, Say one more word and you'll share your predecessor's fate. That got the man to quickly shut up. The scientist had good reason to be worried. He had heard of the destructive power of the Hydreigon, but had never witnessed it, and he didn't want to. He was destined to be disappointed. The glow around the Xylus faded, and in its place was the three-headed, six-winged terror known as the Hydreigon, a freed and very, very angry Hydreigon. The Pokemon snarled up at the laser emitter, then flew up the several feet it needed to reach it. It quickly ripped the machine to bits, literally tearing it down and rending the metal. It then seemed in an insane fit of pain, began to throw its body around, hitting the walls hard enough to dent them. Nervously, the second scientist called the two guards with the fighting types over the intercom. We could use some help subduing that thing, please. Two men entered the room cautiously, each throwing out Pokeballs that opened to reveal humanoid fighting types. The squat, red-skinned judo expert called Throw, and the lean, blue-skinned karate master known as Sock. The rampaging Hydreigon whipped its head towards the intruders. It let out a roar that Getsis and the scientists could hear even behind the pane of thick glass. The Sock's trainer gave the first command. Sock, use Rock Smash, he called. The blue Pokemon leapt into action, hitting the crazed Dark Dragon type with a pressure point striking punch. The Hydreigon screamed as it was hit with super effective attack. flying across the room and hitting the wall hard. It was far from finished, though. It got right back up and swooped, not towards Sock, but towards its trainer. Luckily, Throw's trainer was there to provide backup. "Seismic toss! Now!" Throw interceded with Hydreigon, grabbing it and tossing it to the floor. Despite being hit with 2 attacks, the beast was still not down for the count. It got back up yet again, knowing that if it took one more hit, it would faint. When it attacked this time, though, it truly showed its power, unleashing a devastating Dragon Pulse at Sock. At such close range, the blue Pokemon didn't have a hope in hell of dodging the multicolored beam. It was struck hard, and due to Sock being a glass cannon defensively, it could hit hard, but couldn't take a hit. It went down, condensing back into the energy as its trainer recalled it to its Pokeball. The Hydreigon then turned its attention to the throw. It used the scant few seconds of shock that came over its trainer to viciously attack the Judo Pokemon, biting and attacking with savage bloodlust. "Throw!" the trainer yelled. "Damn it, get out of there!" At the sound of the human's voice, the Hydreigon stopped trying to gore the poor Throw and gathered flames in its maw, launching what looked like a 5-pointed star made of fire at him. The man was killed instantly as the fire blast made contact and also turned the sealed room's temperature up several hundred degrees in a second. The Sox trainer shrieked as he was cooked alive. The scientists in the adjoining room were rooted to their seats in fear, but Getses was watching with a perverse sense of awe at what he was witnessing. He smiled to himself. "Perfect," he thought. Then, without warning, the Hydreigon began to gather yellow energy in front of it, congealing it into a sphere. Getsy's smile vanished with a heartbeat. "It's charging up a focus blast!" One of the scientists yells, "Everyone down!" Despite the glass being made to withstand heavy impacts, it was no match for the Hydreigon's sheer power. The pane shattered instantly as the bolt of kinetic energy hit it, sending deadly shrapnel flying at the 3 men. Getses dove to the floor, but not quite fast enough. Several stray pieces of glass hit his right arm, tearing the sleeve of his lab coat and drawing blood, while one sliced across his eye, blinding it immediately. Unfortunately for him, adrenaline didn't enter in his system right away, so the pain was acute. The scientist on the left had managed to duck in time and avoid the shards, but the other had not been so lucky. His body was slumped forwards, pierced in dozens of places by razor-sharp glass. The still-living scientist pressed the intercom button on the still-functioning control panel and began to yell frantically, "We need backup down here! We need—" He never finished his sentence as another focus blast turned him into meat juice, sending blood and various bits of guts flying everywhere. "Gah!" Clutching the bleeding eye on the side of his face, Getses stood, pulling out Bisharp's Pokeball and releasing the Sword Blade Pokemon. "Bisharp! X-Scissor!" The only other weakness of dark types was Bug, and X-Scissor was a Bug-type move. The Bisharp ran at the Hydreigon, its armed blades glowing green, and crossed in an X shape ready to slash, but it was cut down in a heartbeat by another fire blast from the insane dragon type. Getses looked upon the beast with the same sense of awe as before, despite a growing voice in his head telling him he should run for his life. The monster truly was a perfect killing machine, and would have no trouble accomplishing the task he had in mind for it. He heard footsteps out in the hall, moving closer. Apparently, the dead scientist's final message had gotten through. He just needed to hold out a little longer. The Hydreigon let loose one more fire blast right at him. Getses almost dodged the fiery 5-pointed star, but it caught him on the arm, setting it ablaze. He screamed in pain, rolling around on the floor, trying to smother the flames. As the monstrous dragon opened its mouth for one final dragon pulse, a blue blur came out of nowhere and slammed into the beast. The Hydreigon smashed into the wall on the far side of the room and landed in a heap, at last knocked out. In shock that he was still alive, if wounded and burned, Getsis passed out, and everything went black. 2 weeks later. Unknown location. 10 p.m. The torches were lit, illuminating the great throne room hall, casting flickering shadows upon the walls. The banners that bore the organization's emblem were hung, watchful sentinels over the proceedings. The sages and lesser members were gathered. All was ready. Holding a small purple pillow upon which a golden crown sat, Getsis walked through the hall towards an ornate throne. He had long changed out of his lab coat, now wearing a fancy cloak more suitable for the ceremony that was about to begin, the crowning of the king of Team Plasma. "Today," he announced, "is a glorious day. After many years, the king is finally ready to bear the honor of the task of liberation. Liberation of Pokemon from the selfish, disgusting trainers that abuse and enslave them." He spat the word trainer out of his mouth like it was a toxin he had accidentally ingested. The 6 sages and a large gathering of lesser members of the organization lining the hall all cheered. Getsis let them have their moment, then held up his hands to silence them. "Bring forth the king." On cue, a young man, clothed in elegant robes fit for royalty, appeared at the end of the hallway. He had long tea-green hair, much like Getsis himself, but his was much longer and trailed down his back in a bushy ponytail. He was flanked on either side by 2 women, his caretakers, Anthea and Concordia. The young man slowly and almost reverently walked down the carpeted floor towards the throne. Getsis moved aside briefly, letting the young man stand in front of the ornate chair. Getsis held the crown high above his head with both hands, revealing his badly burned right arm. Thankfully, a less than willing skin donor had prevented the need for amputation, but the wounds were still visible and permanent. As the crown was lowered onto his head, the young man closed his eyes, thinking of his early childhood. He remembered being alone, with no one to raise him, save for wild Pokemon. He also remembered how Getsis, his father, had found him and taken him home, taught him of the dangers and selfish abuse trainers gave to their Pokemon, how important it was to separate them and let Pokemon be free, perfect beings. All of it had led to this day. Then, feeling the weight of the crown upon his head, he opened his eyes again, the reminiscing over. Cheers of love, "Long live the king!" broke out in the hall, while Althea and Concordia looked on from the sidelines. The young man raised his left arm to call for silence once more, opening his mouth to speak. "As king of Team Plasma, I, Natural Harmonia Gropius, swear to lead the world into a new and better age. I will embrace this solemn and sacred duty wholeheartedly and liberate Pokemon from trainers that have abused them for far too long. Humans will no longer cruelly oppress Pokemon. This I promise on my life." While all this was being said, Getsis was doing some recollections of his own. He had been saved by an Axelgore, a lightning-fast bug type, owned by a member of his most loyal servants, the Shadow Triad. The Mad Hydreigon had been confined to a special Pokeball that would only open when the central button was clicked 3 times in rapid succession. He had been warned to never open it until it was time, and to recall the crazed dragon immediately after its task was done. Surgeons had operated on his injured eye, but there was nothing they could do, and it had to be removed. Getsis now wore a red monocle of sorts to cover the scar. The room in the P2 laboratory where the virus had forcibly evolved had suffered heavy damage, and as a result, Project Ginsec had to be put on hold, at least for 2 years. Still, these were minor setbacks. Getsis allowed himself to smile. Yes, everything was going as planned. I have to confess, I was actually really excited to read this prologue. Of course, the rest of the story is on fanfiction.net or soon to be fanfiction.online under Rylek196. My husband is actually a longtime Pokemon fan and actually got me to play a couple of the games with him recently. And I really enjoyed it. In fact, I found some parts of this story so exciting that I actually had to re-record because I was breathing heavily during the action scenes while I was acting them out. It's crazy what happens whenever you're reading something good. Thank you so much for being with us today, and I hope you will tune in every Friday for more stories shared by new writers. If you're a writer yourself and would be interested in having one of your stories read on our podcast, please go to our website, www.thebuddingwriterpodcast.com, and check out our specifications. My name is Shayna Arman, and this was The Budding Writer. Until next time, I hope all your stories have happy endings.